Just a reminder that Field Goals is brought to you by the Ballard Agency. The Ballard Agency is a family-owned and operated business in Kirkland, Washington that's been going for over 50 years. They are an insurance company. If you have a business, if you have your own business or you're starting a business, you've got a startup, craft brewery, coffee, one of those local Seattle-type deals, just please use Ballard Agency. Go to ballardagency.com and tell them that Field Goals sent you so they know these ads are working. That's the Ballard Agency located in Kirkland for all your insurance needs. It's Thursday, August 20th. It's another episode of Reel in the Field Goals. I am one of your hosts, Kenneth Arthur, and with me is
Danny Kelly,
managing editor of fieldgoals.com, as well as writer on SB Nation. And today we are talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. The Seahawks play them on Friday, August 21st in Kansas City. It's going to be a chance for, once again, some of these it's going to be interesting to see what the offensive line does, who's, starting, how much reps the offensive line goes. And I think also just people want to know more about Ty Lockett and Frank Clark and some of the other stars in week one, as well as some of the guys that didn't do so well. Our guest today, coming a bit later in the show, is Joel Thorman, the managing editor over at Arrowhead Pride, as well as an editor for SBNation.com. Definitely one of the best in the SB Nation blogging business. And so we talked to him about the Kansas City Chiefs, former Husky Marcus Peters, some former Seahawks on the team like Spencer Ware, and then we just get into it. Jay Howard as well, who's going to be playing an important role for them to begin the year. So we're just going to get into it right now. First, we want to talk a little bit about the Seahawks, some of the news items going around the NFL. Just starting with the game tomorrow, Danny, what are you looking to see?
Well, I think you definitely touched on it when you said the offensive line. I think that's going to probably be the number one thing to watch. Obviously with Justin Britt potentially, I think he's going to start at left guard. I can't imagine they would practice him all week there and then switch it back to tackle. But so yeah, having Justin Britt at guard, Gary Gilliam at right tackle. Maybe we'll see Drew Nowak play center this week a little bit more with the first team.
You think it's Nowak?
It is Nowak, I believe.
It is. Oh, okay.
I tweeted out the how to say everybody's name the other day, and I think what it was, but I'm not entirely sure.
That's always tough, because it's like there's even they're made up words. The sounds rarely ever make sense anyway. But like if you get into say Benoit, Benoit, that should be Benoit from everything we heard from French or whatever. But I remember when Andy, what I thought was Benoit, did that whole soccer girls tweet. Then when Amy Poehler and Seth Meyers, skewered him for it, they said Benoit. So I'm
maybe they anglicized it a bit. I'm not sure how he might pronounce it, but
can everyone just fall in line? It's good enough.
There's some weird ones on the Seahawks even too. I think there's one guy. I think he's an offensive lineman. They list him as an offensive lineman, Will Parachek, or Will Paracak, but they pronounce it Prechek, which just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like the Brett Favre thing. But yeah, so yeah. I digress. So yeah, offensive line to me is the interesting thing. It's going to be fun to see some of the backup guys too, like Glowinski and Poole, Sokoli. Yeah.
Christian.
And Christian Sokoli. And yeah, so that's going to be the number one thing. Obviously, the Chiefs have Justin Houston, so that's going to be...
what we should do is we should pronounce everybody's name the way that we want to pronounce it. Like,
that, yeah.
Like Bruce Arvine.
Bruce. I like that, yeah.
So Bruce Arvine. But, yeah, that's the whole thing. You wrote an article, you wrote a series of articles about what preseason stats mean. But offensive linemen, obviously we don't get stats.
Right.
Is there any way how do you think that coaches even evaluate a successful number of snaps for a guy like Jerry Gilliam as compared to, someone like Terry Poulet?
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a number of things they do. Obviously, if you screw up your assignments and things like that, and I think those are things that they look for, or how dependable are you in that area. Then, of course, just how they move their feet, how they use their hands, how they engage, how much anchor they're able to put out there. Things like that. How much nasty. I think that's a big thing they look for too, and it's like finishing. Tom Cable always talks about finishing. So like last week, everyone watched as Justin Britt was manhandled on the first pass snap of the game, and then later on, I think on the Seahawks' second drive, J.R. Sweezy got worked, and that ended up in a sack on third down. So in those 1-on-1 situations, how do they work in those situations? Because I think that right there is just one easy way of determining how they did. And so, yeah, I mean, you can talk about the scheme, you can talk about everyone getting on the same page and continuity, but when you're getting beat up front just one-on-one, like that's a little bit disconcerting. So I think that's why they're moving Britt inside. Maybe he's not quite perfect for that role, and then obviously I think they really liked what Jerry Gilliam did. At right tackle, he kind of looked really natural there, former tight end. Good. And they always talk about this, and I don't think a lot of people really know, but he has good feet. He moved well. He's not stopping his feet when contact hits him, which I think is what happened with Britt on that first sack. Von Miller put his hands on him and stopped his feet, and then he just went around him.
God, that was ugly.
Yeah. So
that was a really bad play. Do you think that the Seahawks and Pete Carroll, do you think that Pete Carroll has respect for offensive linemen? And I mean that in the way of like, do you think he thinks that it matters to have a good offensive line?
Yeah, I think so. They obviously spent a first-round pick on James Carpenter. That didn't work out, of course.
And Russell Kung in a second and a third.
First, and obviously, Justin Britt's a second. I think they recognize the value in it, but at the same time, it's like, I kind of just say this, like, you can't really expect the team to have elite players at every freaking position. Like, it's just unreasonable.
Right.
It's just, there's a salary cap, and they've been last in the draft order for the last couple of years, or second to last, obviously last year, and then last the year before. So it's like, what? This is a parity driven league. It's hard to get really good players at every position. So sorry that the offensive line is an issue, but you know what? They have an elite defense. They have elite front seven. They have an elite secondary. They've got, now they have an elite tight end. They've got a really good, running back. They have a really good quarterback. They've got, solid receivers. I wouldn't say that the receiver crew is, elite or anything like that, but Tyler Lockett potentially could help push them up a lot in there. So it's like you're talking like almost every one of their position groups is either really good or elite.
It seems like
offensive line.
Yeah, and it seems like what you draft early, at least for the Seahawks, what you would draft early is the things that you feel, I guess, that you can't find.
Yeah, and the thing is with the zone blocking scheme, in historically, teams have been able to get by with lower level guys just because it's more of a team effort. It's more of like, it's very much dependent on continuity. Smaller, more athletic players, because you're doing different things than a lot of teams do with their, straight ahead blocking or power O blocking or whatever. So it's a little bit different. So that's a market efficiency that they try and, exploit or whatever. And so last year, you had the best run game in the NFL, but also one of, if not the worst pass protection group in the NFL. So, to me, it's always just a trade-off. It's like, you can't ignore the offensive line. At the same time, it's not like you can easily make every offensive or every position group elite on your team. Like, it's the NFL. This is reality. Like, so to me, that's kind of where we are. That's the main concern, obviously, this year. But I'm not freaking out quite yet. I think, moving Britt to left guard makes some sense. And it'd be nice to see if Gilliam can kind of take over that role at right tackle and roll with it. They obviously started a rookie last year and did okay. I mean, not, okay is a relative, but right. But with the zone blocking and the read option stuff that they do, where you're basically Russell Wilson's taking one defensive player out of the equation just by being there. That's kind of, again, that's something that they can take advantage of, and they don't, they can work around.
Do you think that the very nature of Russell Wilson will prevent the Seahawks from ever having an offensive line that is above average or elite?
It just kind of it depends, of course, on development of some of these guys that they picked this year. Like, what happens with Terry Poole? Like, does he become a solid starter? Does Mark Lewinsky become a solid starter? We really can't, decide yet. And is Christian Sokoli going to, turn out kind of like a J.R. Sweezy type, where he turns out pretty well considering he was transferring over from the defensive side of the ball. So I think they recognize that it would be nice to have a couple of really solid guards just because of what they were able to do in New Orleans with Drew Brees in terms of, really giving him a pocket to work with. So I think they recognize that and they know that, and I think they're, making investments in it. But
if the Seahawks could literally transfer the Dallas Cowboys offensive line to their team, would the Dallas Cowboys offensive linemen be just as good, or do you think they would look worse? Would Russell Wilson stay in the pocket and pass the ball like Aaron Rodgers, or would he be scrambling?
I think, it's relative. I think the Cowboys did run a zone scheme, so I think they would transfer pretty well over here, and that would be pretty awesome. And putting Marshawn Lynch behind, that offensive line with, a couple all pros, couple pro bowlers, that would be really pretty interesting, of course.
More than a couple people have said that DeMarco Murray should have run for 2,500 yards last year.
Yeah.
And I think on the field.
I think Murray's a good runner, but I think you put one of like Marshawn Lynch or, Jamal Charles behind that line, and it'd be absurd. So, So, I think at the end of the day, like I said, it's like, you can only have so many elite position groups. I think people are being a little unreasonable. It's like,
right.
It's like, it's a parity driven league. It's like designed to make parity. So, I'm
excited for the defensive line. And I think that the defensive line actually, we might not have, if you looked at this team in 2012, when they had Chris Clemens and Red Bryant, we thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then now it's, Clemens and Bryant are gone, and both of them were past their prime and are even more so now. And it's Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill, Frank Clark, and Cassius Marsh. And I'm just speaking, just of the outside. They have those four guys that can play the outside, and then Bruce Irvin can get out down there on the line, and then obviously in the middle, Brandon Mebane and Jordan Hill. So it seems like they actually have found a way from last season to this season to improve a group in a way that arguably, if everything broke right, would make them one of the top 5 defensive lines in the league.
Yeah, and that's right. If everything breaks right, this is a team that could be really elite on the front 7.
And the back 4.
Yeah. It's not a coincidence that this team has led the NFL in scoring defense for the last couple of years, given up the fewest amount of yards for the last couple of years. Like, they're stacked. They're really freaking good. Their pass rush has been really good. And that really, and it works hand in hand with the pass defense. Like, they work together. That's very much like a coordinated effort.
I don't think that they've put all their eggs in one basket for this season or anything. And I think they're built well to be a great team in 2017 and 2018. But at the same time, it does sort of feel like, with the Cam Chancellor situation, with Michael Bennett situation, with the Bruce Irvin situation, with other guys that probably have situations that just aren't speaking up right now, that there is sort of a feeling that this has a chance to be one of the best teams of all time this year, at least one of the best defenses of all time. And at the same time, it feels like next year there could be a drop-off just due to those contract situations, because I don't think if Michael Bennett plays this year on his contract, I don't think he's going to do it next year.
Yeah, it's the business side of everything. When you're having a lot of success and being a high impact player, you're going to want more money. And the only leverage players have really is the threatening to hold out or whatever. And so that's what they do during the off season. Hopefully it doesn't carry over into the season. Obviously with Cam, that would be a really bad situation. But I think that's just kind of what happens when you're successful. I think it's a good it's annoying as hell as like people who cover the team, but it's a good problem to have that you have players that are good enough to think they're worth holding out. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So you can look at it that way. It's like, honestly, the specter of trying to pay all your great players, like that's a really good problem to have. Like, you really shouldn't look at it like that's a negative. Like, this means the Seahawks are accumulating a lot of talent. Like, that's a good thing.
Right.
So, I think that they'll end up keeping the core group that they feel is going to be the most effective and keep them together. And that's what they've done through the next 3 years. And really, that's all you can ask for. That's what the plan has been all along. And then they're going to fill out the rest of the roster through their volume drafting and commitment to development, and hope that works. And you can't strike gold with everything with every player, but I think they believe with the amount of players they draft and the amount of players they bring in through trades and free agency, not even big free agency, just like regular, like a Atiba Rubin potential could be good. So, you got guys like Will Blackman, Kerry Williams that could potentially step in and just, hopefully that'll be a relatively safe transition. So I think it's just like people worry a lot about the future. It's like, I mean, just enjoy what they have now. Like,
it is tough. Everybody's, it's hard to focus on. Everybody does think about like, oh, Cam, don't you care about the team? Russ, you're so greedy. Don't you care about the team? And it's like, everybody, and they're not saying it because they don't want him around now. They're saying it because they want to be able to sign a free agent next year or something. And it's like, shut up. But one of the reasons that players do hold out is because in the NFL, your career can end on any moment. And if you don't have, this type of security, there's a reason, that half of these guys go broke right after they get out of the league because, for a number of reasons or whatever. But $5 million might sound like a lot of money if that's what you've earned in your career. But if you have to make it last for the rest of your life and you also have made some commitments during your time as an NFL player, $5 million is not very much money. So a lot of these guys, they want to be protected in case they get hurt. One guy that decided it was not worth it was Chris Borland of the San Francisco 49ers, who retired after one season, even though he was, right up there for Defensive Player of the Year, one of the best young linebackers in the game, but also playing a position that, asks for a lot of contact, as well as, sort of when I was thinking about it, it's like, well, wouldn't Marshawn Lynch, he gets tackled a lot, but you don't see Marshawn Lynch get hit in the head very often. And Chris Borland, these are the guys that often have to lower their heads and put themselves in a position to get hurt. And this article that came out today with ESPN, in an interview with Borland, the first time he's really spoken out since his thing, there were a lot of interesting revelations. It's probably one of the most damning and revealing articles about the NFL that I've read in a really long time. Borland believing that he might have suffered something like 30 concussions over his career, and this is a guy that only played one season in the NFL, and then obviously he's including before that as well. But even still, we're talking not very many seasons. And so when you've got a guy like, let's just say Junior Seau, who goes out there and plays, 20 seasons, you can imagine how many concussions he may have gotten. Danny, do you think that, when other guys get a concussion, we mark it down and we note it and we go like, oh yeah, he had, Wes Welker has X amount of concussions. He's got like 6 concussions, and we think that's really bad. But do you think that the reality of it is that someone like Wes Welker might have 100 concussions and just most of them are undiagnosed?
That's the fear, and kind of the whole basis of the whole concussion argument thing really is that you have these mini concussions every time you hit someone kind of thing. And a concussion is just really when your brain hits up against the, your skull essentially, and it causes damage. And so you can have that on. It's always interesting to me that, some of the hits these guys get concussions on, because some of them don't really look that bad. What I mean? And so that's definitely kind of the scary, it's definitely the scary part of this whole concussion thing. And, it makes you nervous for the long-term success, or not long-term success, but the long-term viability of the sport and things like that. And that's why it's encouraging that, like this. That's why I really do actually like this whole hawk tackle thing, is because Pete Carroll and the Seahawks are trying to make it take the head out of the tackling thing. And that's not going to solve everything, of course, but it's like one small step to kind of like keep things going in the right direction. And so I actually, it's one of the more difficult parts of being a football fan and loving the sport is that, it's the future is sort of uncertain when it comes to the concussion thing, because it's definitely a very serious issue. And that, eventually is going to become even more serious as people learn more about concussions and things like that. So
it's interesting that the way that Chris Borland talked about the game, because, I think that because I spoke to Jimmy Ward, his teammate, and I asked him if he could walk away, and he said, no, right. That's the sort of question that I get from most of the football players that I ask that. It's like, this is a part of me, and that's not ever going to go away until they force me to stop playing.
Right.
But Borland wasn't really from what he really says in this article, he's not really any different. It's just, he said that he compared it to being, second best feeling compared to, and he said very scientifically, sexual intercourse.
Intercourse, yes.
Well, outside of sexual intercourse, I like to think Chris Borland actually talks like that.
They were having intercourse.
Well, I was having sexual intercourse, and I thought, well, this is the only thing better than football. But I'm not trying to sound disrespectful all of a sudden.
No, anyway, it's just a funny wording. But yeah,
it is. Like, come on, okay, but that he was an addiction, and that he just had to fight the addiction, and that was it. That he just fought the addiction because he was like, and especially when he says, I don't really trust the NFL. That meant that, he felt like the NFL was going to put him into the ground, doesn't really care about him, and wasn't going to risk his life because, it's not just money problems these guys have. There's also the fact that a lot of them who are in their 40s are pretty much acting as though they are in their 80s, that they just don't have quality of life.
Right, yeah, and that's the
and if you were to pick a player on the Seahawks that was the closest probably to being in Chris Borland's situation, I think that you would have to pick Cam Chancellor, because it's like that's the guy that's delivering the hits. We have played that Vernon Davis clip a billion times.
Right.
Everybody, it's like one of the best plays in Seahawks history, and it probably took like a year off both their lives.
Yeah. I mean, that's the scary part about all of that. And that was a legal hit too. I mean, technically they called it a foul or whatever, but
right.
But yeah, I mean, that's how they teach it. And so even that, it's just so violent that you have the potential of having a concussion on that type of play. And that's what the NFL is trying to, people always complain like, oh, if it looks violent, they're calling a flag. Well, yeah, I mean, that's right. Yes, correct. That's what they're doing, because they want to take those violent hits out of the game and slowly but surely have it just not be part of the game. And I know that people complain about that, and I know that people are nervous because, I mean, frankly, people love the violence of the sport too. Like it's what a lot of people love about football. But at the same time, like in the interest of the long-term viability of keeping the sport alive, like I think the NFL knows they need to start slowly shifting the culture of those big hits. And I think it's already actually worked. Like, marginally in terms of, not like obviously there's like been a sea change or anything like that, but it's like I feel like there has been a marginal improvement in terms of there's not as many head-to-head hits. You don't see guys doing the whole Sidney Rice thing where like they get knocked out in midair.
Yeah.
Quite as often, I think. I don't know the stats on that, but that's just how it feels like anecdotally. And so I think that's what they're trying to do, like over the long term, like turn it into more like a rugby type sport, and people are going to bitch and moan about that until it happens. But I think it's really what has to happen over the long term. Yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how because at the end of the day, what's going to be most important is how much money the NFL makes. So, if they feel like, so they want the game to be safer, but they don't want to lose fans. But, at the end of the day, like football is not going to go away. People are still going to play football,
right?
And people are still going to watch football, and they want to. But,
I mean, there's going to always be people who love it. And even like Barland, who retired, like you said, he said it was like an obsession or like an addiction.
Right.
So, and people love football. Like, it's like by far the biggest sport. And,
and people are always like, well, then someone's going to die on the field. And to me, it's like, maybe that's true. Maybe it will.
Yeah.
But at the same time, football isn't a new sport. It's been around for 100 years. It's been played professionally, since the 30s. And I'm sure the players probably have died, and we just don't even know or remember. But it hasn't happened in a modern era.
No, definitely not.
And there's been some pretty mean hits out there. I'm sure it's caused some sort of – obviously there's always questions about, psychological issues and whatnot. But, like you said, if the Seahawks are working on ways to make it safer, then I'm sure that other teams are as well. And, Seahawks having the best defense, they can really set an example.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah. So I think the way that the Seahawks do it too, it's not like they're taking the fun out of it, because like at the end of the day, it's kind of like a blood sport. Like people do like the violent part of it, like people love big hits. Like, oh, you got knocked the fuck out. You know what I mean? Like people are still going to love that. People like MMA is like probably the second biggest sport in the US right now. Right.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. And with the way the Seahawks are doing it, they're not taking big hits out. They're just taking the head out of hits. And you can't do that 100% with anything. But
yeah, how does a boxer or an MMA person even go one fight without 30 concussions?
I mean, they probably do. Like,
MMA
is like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I would.
Wait, you're not? Why the hell did I have that checkup with you?
Yeah. Oh, God. We can talk about that later. But yeah, so no, I don't know. I'm sure that MMA, boxing are really terrible for that too. It's obviously, an issue that will come up with them as well. But
yeah.
So I think that the nice thing about the Seahawks goal here with the hawk tackle, videos and everything is it's not taking the fun out of football. It's still a very physical brand of football and like, intimidating and all that. And you get that primal satisfaction knowing that they're like a very physically intimidating team, but at the same time trying to take head injuries out of it. So that's good.
Instead of calling it hawk tackling, why didn't they just call it hawkling?
That's why they pay you the big bucks.
Actually they don't, but at least the Seahawks don't. I just also want to let people know that if you go to fieldgoals.com to check out the Hard Knocks Seahawks edition article that I posted today.
That was great.
That was fun to do. It's gotten I'm very overwhelmed with the support people had for it. And
you're going to do that once a week now?
It's kind of tough to follow that up, but I did have so much fun doing it that, it's possible. So,
well, maybe you could make it like a every year type of thing, like do one a year.
Perchance.
Okay.
There's always we'll see what happens. We'll see how it goes. But that was fun. The players are fun. I chose them at random pretty much. I mean, obviously I played on some of the stuff like Russell being a robot or Kristen Michael maybe having some fumbling problems.
I like how Russell Okung was like the random like cut.
Yeah, because it had to be
Halpert. Like, right? Who was the one that did the Jim Halpert look?
It was Tavares.
Yeah, that's right. That cracked me up. Yeah.
It's fun to just play around with guys that we're familiar with and put them in situations that, would be fun to see them in. And having the Seahawks sort of a combination between Hard Knocks and The Office was...
that would be classic, yeah.
Yeah, so that was fun. So check that out and share it around with people. And, obviously if it does well, then I'll be more inclined to do it again. But,
They did add it. I noticed they added it to our SB Nation's Hard Knocks like headquarters for
really?
Proper. So yeah, it's in there.
That's funny.
Yeah, so that's cool.
So I think now would be a good time for us to kick to the interview with Joel Thorman of Arrowhead Pride, and just go ahead and listen to that right now.
Joining us now is Joel Thorman, the editor over at Arrowhead Pride, also the NFL league manager at SB Nation. Just here to talk a little bit about the Chiefs and the preseason game coming up here. So let's just break right into it. Joel, first off, what is the biggest question facing the Chiefs for this week in particular?
Hey, guys. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Right now, kind of the thing everyone is talking about is the offensive line. It was already a major question coming into the season. You know, the Chiefs made some changes. They're still trying to figure out exactly who the top 5 offensive linemen will be. And now we have injuries to both starting tackles. So both tackles will be out for this game. So it's kind of disappointing because I feel like with the first team, at least you can get like a glimpse of, you know, what you might be seeing. But man, with 2 tackles out, and, you know, all 5 spots will be different than they were last year, at least in this upcoming game. You know, it's going to be kind of difficult to learn a whole lot about the Chiefs with that line. But that's definitely the big thing that everyone's freaking out about right now.
Who are the tackles that are going to be playing this week, do you know?
So Eric Fisher and Jeff Allen are out. This week, it will likely be Donald Stevenson on the left side. When everybody is healthy, he's competing for the right tackle job usually. And then on the right side, Gerard Pugsley. I think he was undrafted last year or 2 years ago. And he just, you know, kind of rose through the ranks a little bit with these injuries. So he'll likely be on the right side.
Cool.
It's been this is the 3rd year with Andy Reid, right?
Yeah. This is entering year 3, right?
So it's been better, but how much concern is there that this is the ceiling, like that you're not going to get to those real Super Bowl contending years, or do you think that that's on the path of what's going on?
You know, I think people don't have as much of a problem with Andy Reid. I think with Alex Smith as the quarterback, there's always going to be a, you know, good chunk of the fans who don't think the Chiefs will ever get there. You know, until they do, they're right. But you know, you also got to look at where the Chiefs were coming from. You know, they were pretty bad there for a few years. So I think Andy Reid kind of bringing them back to respectability is huge. So the concern that this is the ceiling isn't, you know, there is that concern a little bit. But I think, you know, people are just as excited to, you know, get into the playoffs. And, you know, I'm always like, just get into the playoffs and see what happens from there.
Right. And you guys, I mean, if there is one thing that concerns you the most, what's the thing that's been holding back Kansas City? Like, let's say last year they were 9-7. What kept them from being like 11-5? What was the main problem?
They just didn't really have an explosive offense. You know, they had a really good defense. Alex Smith didn't turn it over. They ran it okay with Jamal Charles. I mean, that right there will get you like 8 wins a year in the NFL. Mm-hmm. So I think what held them back was just the lack of explosion on offense. I mean, they just did not move the ball downfield like at all. You know, they were still like 16th in scoring. So I think it was kind of easy for the Chiefs to say like, hey, you know, that's of course we want to be more explosive, but hey, we're still scoring points. You know, we're an average offense. So, you know, I think they can kind of fall back on that. But, you know, this offseason, swapping out Bo for Jeremy Maclin, and then drafting Chris Conley, who is one of those, you know, workout freaks at the combine. Mm-hmm. You know, I think that speaks a lot to how they want to be able to move the ball downfield more.
And Maclin's looking just as he expected.
That's going to be like something that they're going to try to do a little bit more.
And then Maclin's looking like the real deal. How much should we expect to see him in the game?
So it sounds like the starters are supposed to go close to a half. So I bet like a quarter and a half or something like that. And Maclin will be out there for most of that, I would imagine. He caught like one pass last week. He's, you know, during training camp practices that I saw, I mean, he was obviously the best receiver on the field. But I guess I want to see him in multiple games and how often the Chiefs actually, kind of send him out on deeper routes. Although, Macklin's fast as hell too. So I'm imagining some of those like slants and little bubble screens that Andy Reid likes to run. Like at some point, Macklin's going to be able to bust one of those. So even if that passing game is kind of, back to the 5 yards or less range, they might be able to still get a little more explosion out of them.
The Seahawks have a, bell cow back in Marshawn Lynch. Obviously, the Chiefs have one in Jamal Charles. Do you see his workload getting tapered down at all this year, or are they mostly going to rely on him again?
I think they'll rely on him for the most part this year. I feel like the question of getting Jamal Charles some rest and Dontari Poe is like one of those questions that comes up that we talk about at this time of year every year.
Yeah.
And then when the season comes and the Chiefs are, 5-4 and really need a win, yeah, I'm going to say give it to Jamal Charles 35 times and keep his backup off the field because he's so much better. So I think it's one of those things that, yeah, you say you want to get Jamal Charles less work, but when you're actually in the middle of the game, it's pretty tough to take him out. But that said, the Chiefs do have this player that you'll see a decent amount of on Friday. His name is Sharkhandrick West, undrafted guy last year. And the Chiefs had cut the guy that he was kind of competing with to be the third back. So it looks like he's going to make the team. And now he's starting to get some first and second team looks too, because he's kind of like this shiftier back that is closer to Jamal Charles, kind of this shifty guy. Whereas, Jamal's backup now, Niall Davis, is like, not as great catching the ball in the backfield. Like the offense has to kind of change when Niall comes in. So that's why I think they may look at this Sharkhandrick West as someone who might be able to spell Jamal a little more often.
Is that looking as though Spencer Ware, former Seahawk, has much of a chance to make the team?
No. He's unless I'm shocked, I don't think he's going to make it. He's been lining up with the fullbacks there, and the Chiefs have a really good one in Anthony Sherman. And there's no way that he's passing the other top three backs on the team. So unless he sneaks in on special teams, I just don't see how he gets on the team.
You guys have a tight end.
We have a number of those former Seahawks now.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that down the way when we talk defense, but you guys,
Danny and I have no plans, so that's probably why it's coming off. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask because we like the guy Travis Kelce, the tight end that you guys have. He's a definite, potential all pro or Pro Bowl, potential All Pro down the line. What is it? What kind of role does he expected to play in this offense? Is he still one of the main go-to guys?
Yeah. So actually, it's last year. At this time last year, Kelce was the number 2 tight end to Anthony Fasano, and that really didn't change until Fasano was getting more snaps than him up until I have to go back and look at my notes, but somewhere around the midway point of the season or later, Kelce wasn't getting full-time snaps, and he put together a season like that. So I think the thing that has us really excited about him is that he's going to be a full-time player all year long. And he's another year removed from his microfracture surgery. Because of that, I think there's always going to be the injury risk in the back of your mind.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think he's set for a pretty big year, I would imagine. He's going to have a lot more attention, than maybe he did last year, but he's, physically he's able to go up and get it. So, I still expect a pretty big year for him.
Seahawk fans will remember him because he ran over Earl Thomas last year in the game. I'm sure the Chiefs fans love that.
Yes, I think we got a vine to that and sent it to Jim Ross from the wrestling guy who's like, "Oh, by God Almighty, kill him."
Oh no!
It's funny
when you make plays against the Seahawks. It's like the highlight of your season. You certainly don't ever forget those.
It's weird because it's like a preseason game against the Chiefs is one of the most important games in franchise history back in 2012 when Russell Wilson established himself as a starter. And then, so it's become an interesting, like, sort of, even though the Chiefs and Seahawks rarely play each other in a regular season game, it seems like there's been a rivalry between the two fan bases based on this whole getting louder thing.
Right.
Is that still a thing that matters to Kansas City?
I mean, since the Chiefs don't have like Super Bowl appearances and trophies to match, then it probably means more to Chiefs fans than maybe Seahawks fans. So it's not as much of a thing. There's definitely a large crowd who points their finger and laughs at the people who kind of defend the Chiefs and Seahawks fans rivalry. So I'm kind of over it. I thought the doing the Guinness thing was cool at first, and then, we kind of copied you and yada, yada, yada.
The fourth or fifth time, it got kind of old.
Yeah.
In 2013, I remember Bill Burr on his podcast just went off on Seahawks fans, calling them stupid losers, to care about how loud they are, and that they should just worry about winning the Super Bowl because they were a good team, and then they won the Super Bowl, and now, people are just more like, oh, yeah, that's better than being loud. But it's still like, I think there were also a large contingent of us that are like, this never mattered. It doesn't mean anything. And that, that we are just, it is a good place to play. We do like the team, but I'm pretty sure that everybody likes their team.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I was saying, the Chiefs haven't had as much like postseason success. You got to have something to hang your hat on, and it's always been a pretty loud stadium, so that's our thing, I mean,
I think, sometimes suffering can make fans somewhat more clever and fun because, the Deadspin did their Why Your Team Sucks on the Chiefs today, and the comments from the fans on why the Chiefs suck are actually pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's when your team really sucks that you get, banner, you get a plane to go fly a banner asking to fire your GM.
You think the Patriots fans have any personality? I don't think they do anything that's interesting or whatever. So there's always that trade-off. Man, I'm sure that the Seahawks fans are just becoming more and more insufferable.
Well, if you keep winning games soon, you'll be Patriots fans. So.
Oh, God. You mentioned the Seahawks, couple ex-Seahawks on the defensive side of the football. One of them is probably going to be really important this year in that he's one of the guys taking over for Dontari Poe until he gets back on the field, and that's Jay Howard, former Seahawks fourth-round pick. People around here are pretty – I mean, they were optimistic about him, and then he kind of just didn't really show up his first year and then was cut his second year, I believe, and you guys picked him up. What have you seen from him, and what can we expect from him?
He and, so Dontari Poe, starting nose tackle, had back surgery, and he's out for, let's say roughly the first half of the season, somewhere around there. Jay Howard, last year was the replacement for Mike DeVito at defensive end and started pretty much all season. And so now he's, going to be one of the main guys taking over for Poe at nose tackle. Mike DeVito will also be in there a little bit as well, because Poe was one of those guys who played every single snap. And there's there's not many guys like that at his size that do that. So he's especially difficult to replace. But yeah, I like Jay Howard, especially, at least from my perspective. I look at him as, a guy you signed for free, and hey, he turns out to be a starter. That's pretty good.
Right.
If he was my team's fourth round pick, I'd probably, maybe be a little bit more critical, but given the investment, I've been pretty happy with how things have turned out with him. So, can't really have enough of those big guys. And, when DeVito went down last year, the run defense struggled a little bit. But Howard did an admirable job, I'd say.
You guys had a similar situation to the Seahawks fan base over there in Kansas City this offseason with the Justin Houston saga. You guys got it done, of course, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, so that's over.
6 years, 101 million or something like that.
That's not shabby. Is he going to be playing this weekend?
Yeah, he'll play a little bit.
We should be worried.
Yeah. No, he's. I mean, I think
God.
I don't think he had like any pressures. I think even his like Pro Football Focus score was like 0.0 or something. So they don't really get too crazy during the preseason.
That's good.
So, thank God. I don't know if you've seen our offensive line.
He's one of those guys that, like, last year he skipped all of the offseason last year, and he skipped most of it this year. And, he comes in, like, in amazing shape. It doesn't look like he's missed a beat. So I'm just waiting for week 1 with him, really.
I can't believe you guys got him for a 3rd-round pick.
I know. He was I remember he was being mocked to like the Falcons at 27 in the first round that year. And,
we talked about him here too.
Yeah, he just like he had that drug test before it.
Yeah.
And slipped all the way to the 3rd round. I didn't really, I mean, I knew a little bit about him. I thought he would be good. I just didn't think he would be like
ridiculous.
All world, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
for
he's
someone
kind of a super strong, really fast, like smart dude, hardly ever says anything. He's just like a fun one to have on the team.
I just want to know, since we're going to be, for anyone that's actually going to watch like the second half of this game, with those players coming in, who are the guys for the Chiefs, the names that don't have, that are no names? Who are the guys that Seahawks fans should keep an eye on just because, hey, this guy actually might be something?
Yeah, so at receiver, the Chiefs' like top 5 receivers are pretty much set. You have a bunch of guys competing for probably one spot. And I like Fred Williams. He's been on the practice squad for a couple of years, and he's one of those guys that's like on your practice squad, yet he never gets in the game, so you recognize the name, but you have no idea what he can do until the preseason comes.
It's the most unassuming name of all time.
Yeah, exactly.
Fred Williams.
So last week he had 6 catches and 80 yards against the Cardinals, and he scored a touchdown and had an amazing dance where he did some sort of gyration. So I hope he scores so he does something like that again. But that kind of opened up my eyes, and he's someone certainly to keep an eye on. Another one I like is shaping up to be the Chiefs' second tight end. His name's James O'Shaughnessy, tight end out of Illinois State. He was a 5th-round pick. His claim to fame is that in one of his games last year, he knocked himself out on a kickoff during the kickoff. So, but he's an athletic guy, and considering he came from D2, I mean, he looks like he belongs in the NFL. So, he's kind of looking like he'll likely be the number 2 receiver or share those duties with someone else. So those two on offense, I would definitely keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Go ahead.
I guess just one other thing. I mean, would you defend the Chiefs linebackers as being better than the Seahawks secondary? And it's fine if you would. I mean, it's why I picked it, because it's almost an even division.
I lean towards probably not, just because I think Chancellor, Thomas, Sherman are all, top, handful at their position. And I think for the Chiefs, Derek Johnson and Justin Houston are both very, very good. And Tamba Ali is probably, I think he's like 31 now or 32. So, he's probably losing a little bit each year. So I guess I'd give the edge to the Seahawks there.
Anything?
That's a great question, though. Maybe I'll take that to my blog.
Anything developing with D Ford?
Say it again, Kenny.
Anything developing with D Ford?
Well, last year kind of the plan was that he wasn't going to play much last year because it was Tamba Ali's last year, and then turns out Tamba ended up signing a new deal that'll keep him around for another year. They've been giving a decent amount of the off-season reps to D Ford, and it's almost similar to the Jamal thing where it's like, yeah, let's spot this guy a little bit. And that, that's what you say until you actually get into the game. Because I think right now, Tamba is a better player than D Ford, so it's tough to take him out of the game. But they've been working on, different packages to get D in there, to get, 3 outside linebackers in there and rushing the passer. I still think he's kind of one of those guys who does one thing pretty well. And he's like, has an excellent first step off the edge. But he's not as big as Houston. He doesn't have, the kind of hand fighting ability that Tamba Ali does. So he doesn't have that like second and third move that other players do. So I just hope that this year the Chiefs find what he does really well, which is that speed rush, and put him in position to do that. And even if he's a one trick pony, maybe he can be, pretty darn good at that. So that's kind of what I expect this year. And then next year will probably be the year he's going to, end up becoming a starter.
Right.
Joel, where can people follow you?
Our website is arrowheadpride.com, and then at Arrowhead Pride on Twitter. We are usually a pretty nice blog. I'm sure in the middle of the game after big play, our commenters will prove me wrong, though. So, but yeah, definitely check it out. I always love Seahawks week.
Yeah.
Because you guys do such a great job. I always learn something. So.
Yeah, it's fun cross-blogging. You guys do a great job. I also want to point out that the Chiefs have one of the top 5 names in the NFL. The guy is named Donatello Luckett.
Yep.
So that's a thing.
It's we call him Tello.
Tello.
But Tello Luckett.
We scouted him a little bit over here during the draft time. I remember that guy. He's kind of Golden Tatey, isn't it?
Yeah.
Short, bigger.
Yeah, I would say that's a good way to put it. He's probably a practice squad candidate because I know that they really liked him coming out, and I could sit here and tell you I remember a lot of his training camp reps by the time they got down to like the 9th or the 10th receiver, but I'd just be lying. So, but I think we like him, and I think he's if he makes it anywhere, it would be the practice squad.
I think we would be remiss. I mean, almost close to letting you go, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't at least ask for the Washington fans how Marcus Peters is doing, the first-round pick cornerback out of the University of Washington.
So pretty legit. He I know he had the issues in college, but man, on the field, he certainly looks the part. Like you stand him up to Sean Smith, who's a big dude for a quarterback, and he stands up well against him. He's just like really strong, and especially in the game when the Chiefs can get into a little bit more aggressive defense and really play some bump and run. I think that's where he's gonna really excel. But he's going to be likely a day one starter because Sean Smith is suspended for 3 weeks to start the season. So Peters will start along with the guy from last year, Phillip Gaines, who we really like. And then even when Sean Smith comes back, I bet Peters stays in one of those starting roles on the outside and Gaines moves the inside. So, I think he's the real deal. So that's my assessment 1 week into preseason. I'm not usually too hyperbolic, but
well, as always, we hope no injuries, but still bad luck tomorrow.
Yes. Back at you guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on with us. Really appreciate it. And remember to follow him at Arrowhead Pride on Twitter and arrowheadpride.com. Great website. They're one of the most trafficked websites out there. They do a really good job. They cover everything over there. So head over
Danny's
there.
including Google in terms of that with most traffic websites.
I'm not even exaggerating that much. All right. Talk to you soon, Joel. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you. So that was our interview with Joel. Danny, which players on the Chiefs are you most excited to see?
Well, I think just from a familiarity point of view, it's going to be fun to watch Ron Parker, former Seahawks corner, who played a little bit of safety. He's a safety in college, and now he's the starter for the Chiefs at safety.
Yeah, that's crazy. We often say that the Seahawks don't let go of players that, that they have talented depth, but usually the guys they don't let go of that we like so much, they just become like role players or practice squad players. But Ron Parker really turned into something.
Yeah, and I mean, that just kind of tells you how freaking stacked the Seahawks were that 2013 preseason. I mean, that was insane. He was a cut. So
yeah, would like him now.
Yeah, that would come in handy. I think I'm excited to see that. I think it'll be interesting to see what Joel was talking about with Charkandrick West. I don't know a whole lot about him, so that'll be fun to watch. And then obviously watching Jay Howard will be cool. I think just seeing the former Seahawks and Marcus Peters, of course, and I think the main thing I'll be watching is how the Seahawks react to the Chiefs pass rush. So yeah, I'll just be watching the Chiefs pass rush a lot tomorrow.
Yes, I think you will be watching the Chiefs pass rush a lot tomorrow. But so yeah, check out Arrowhead.com. Follow them on Twitter at Arrowhead Pride for the game at least, and so you can get a lot of the Chiefs. There's nobody that I know of that covers the Chiefs better than Arrowhead Pride. And of all the places that I know that cover the Chiefs, that's the only one. So
they are a Kansas City institution, though.
But yeah, absolutely, they're huge. They get thousands and thousands of people every day.
Yeah.
So we want to thank him for coming on. Obviously, go to fieldgoals.com. Follow Danny at fieldgoals. Follow me at Kenneth Arthur S. And just please keep tuning in every week and subscribe to the iTunes as well. So. Don't know what's going to come next week, but we'll be talking about the Seahawks' next game, which is against the Chargers in San Diego. See you next week.